Welcome back to Altenberg in eastern Germany, just south of Dresden. We are soon to get underway with the team relay events. And the conditions, well, perhaps not quite as sunny as they were earlier. Still, the ice, a very crispy -3. That gave some really good sliding in the women's individual event earlier on. We have a quick look here at the actual start position on the Altenberg track. As you can see, it's well past the Amiga corner, but before the Kreisel, it is in fact the doubles start. Germany has the track record here, and each of the individual legs has to do exactly the same track run. Just having a little look on board what it's like to slide down this track. Fast and furious. Coming down into the bottom section. There's 13 into 14. A little negative G pop right there before these big sweeping left-handers, and you can lose speed before there, and time will just evaporate around the final few corners. The pad itself, well, they're not hitting a pad in this POV, but you do have to sit up and slap the pad to unleash the start gates at the top for your teammates, unless of course you're the doubles, in which case you've come down on the last leg. Italy will come out first, a big country to go first. Of course, they had problems with hitting the actual start pad last time out, and therefore didn't get a finished time. At the moment in last of all the countries, so they have to come out first. Germany, of course, came out in Innsbruck and won comfortably, and they now have the right to come out last in this competition, which can be a reasonable advantage, probably more so than in the individual races. This gives you an idea of what you've got to do and just how hard you have to push it. So here's the Italian team. Sandra Robacher, who slid brilliantly earlier today. She will then hand over to a manual rider rather than what we thought might be the case of Dominik Fischnaller. Kevin Fischnaller also had a good shout for today. Dominik Fischnaller, normally the best that the Italians have, but of course he just hasn't been sliding well, so they've got on form. Sandra Robacher gets us underway here. Now, Robacher, good starter, a little bit lower down the track than she's used to. Shouldn't put her off too much, though. If anything, it should just make it a little bit easier. Team Italy through 11-12, down into 13. Not quite as violent as we saw earlier on today. Speeds were hitting 117 plus there when the women were coming through. But now 109s for Robacher, and here's the pad. Oh, just wafts it, barely. My goodness, that was close. Italians with their second leg, and that's being run by a manual rider. He will hand over to Ivan Nagler, and Mallier is the man behind, Fabien Mallier. They very much came to the fore through the Nations Cup this weekend, so a new pair, but they managed to beat Ryder and Rasno. So once again, going entirely on form, quite right too. 109.6, Emmanuel Ryder, getting good top-end speed. A heavier man should really be carrying more momentum than Robacher, who's probably 20 plus kilos lighter. Now the doubles. The man steering in front, Ivan Nagler, Fabien Mallier is who's behind. But it's pretty much a joint thing, though 80% of the steering is done by the man on top, purely because he has more vision and more control of those Kufen 108.4 kilometers per hour, so slower than Emmanuel Ryder was doing there, rounding up the hill. They must also hit cleanly on the pad to finish this run, and yes they do. 2 minutes 23.115. That's the benchmark for all the others to chase. Well, they were going to start today with Andreyev Vojta, but Robacha, because of her excellent run in the singles, was given the nod, and good move there by Armin Zogler, head coach. Going on form was absolutely the right thing to do. Robacha nearly fluffed it, to be fair, and did indeed fluff it in Innsbruck, but did a solid enough time to unleash Emmanuel Ryder, who had actually a very, very good slide. His speed up close to 110 kilometers per hour. Perhaps these two could have been going faster down the bottom. You would expect the doubles luge to be able to pick up a little bit more momentum and speed and overcome the friction of ice that bit easier with all that mass. But it was the men's leg that went the fastest in the end. Now we're looking at the Kazakh team, and it is Bogacheva, Anastasia Bogacheva, who's doing the first leg. Nikita Koprienko, Roman Yefremov, and his duo partner Denis Talyachenko. Not names you hear too much of in the World Cup, but together they gain the right to slide in this nation's team relay. So right at the get-go, falling behind the Italians and Robacha, no surprise. Oh my goodness. Trying to steer down a straight can be a big error. And that's exactly what happens. You tend to slide around. Now, how does she get the exit of 9, or I should say 10, through 11, 12, and perfect entrance onto 13. So the hairiest moment at the moment so far was right up the top. It's quite slow. She's cutting the ice a great deal just to get the right lines. 103.6. Probably won't see too many slower than that. Now, a clean hit of the pad to unleash our number 2 leg, which is Nikita Koprienko. We'll find out the next split just how far down they are on the Italians. Ooh, again making a similar mistake out of 9 down to Kreisel. My goodness, almost 3 seconds already. That's both the first 2 legs have made a similar error. Coming out of 9, steering on a straight, not a good idea. Oh my goodness, trying to put his foot down on the ice there to almost act like an oar and pull him around away from the wall, but nothing wrong with a light tap on that wall. Is it going to be worse than 3 seconds? He inherited it at about 2.6, 2.7. Yes, it is. It's 4.7 seconds down on the Italians. To be fair, though, the Italians have a very solid team. Maybe not world class, but a top 6 team anyway. So the Kazakh duo now making once again the same error out of 9. Yefremov in front. Tatyachenko is the man behind. Through 12 into 13. 14 speed. 108.9 would be good. 103.5. And each of the legs losing roughly 2.5, maybe even 3 seconds to their Italian counterparts. But they're going to get down. Yes, they do. And second place at the moment. You never know. We do, of course, have 15 nations taking part, and the next nation will be Great Britain, with Danielle Scott, Rupert Stoudinger, Adam Rosen, a well-known figure in luging, and Raymond Thompson. Let's just have a look again. It was the exact same mistake pretty much for all 3 of them. just pinballing down that long straight from 9 into Kreisel. And you really do pay the price there. Not only is it one of the points where you're meant to be picking up speed, but you can also lose an enormous amount, parking it 3 times there in the doubles. So it's the turn of the Brits now. Danielle Scott, the soldier, starts it off for the British, who managed to take 13th place in Innsbruck. A pretty solid team performance, though definitely one they could improve upon here. But this is a fierce, brutal track, and it's already claimed a few victims earlier today. Scott, smooth, very smooth, little rub on the wall before 11. She deals with a late exit out of 11 and 12 well. Through into 14, head comes up. It's quite a nervous ride at this point. A little bump there before 15. Didn't lose too much speed on that, though. Better a bump than a slide any day. And Rupert Staudinger prepares. Didn't make it through in the Nations Cup. Neither did Adam Rosen in the individual. Sometimes the team relay can pull out the best of you. So down on the Italians, of course. And the Kazakhs at this point were about 2.8 seconds down. So the Brits quite a bit closer to the Italians. Starting his exit, very clean out of Kreisel through 11-12, like they're not even there. Is it conservative or is it fast? We'll soon find out. 2.245, 106.2 kilometers per hour is much better speed by Staudinger. Back up the hill. Perhaps Rosen can get a good quick start here and pull back a little bit on the Italians. 2.8 seconds down at the moment. It's a margin that's far too big. Oh, goodness me, a sloppy start there. Somehow overcooked it out of the start house. Just yanking what looked like too hard on one handle over the other, or maybe there was a lack of synergy between the two men. Either way, it's going to spell a drop further away from that Italian time. So the goal now must be for the Brits to... Oof, huge hit there. Goodness me, before 13. And again. Oh my goodness me, you can see from Rosen's face, he's not comfortable at all. You just wonder whether they are actually loaded into the right position or not right out of the start house. Round through the final corner and hits the pad, going at a pretty slow speed, and well, not a look of thrill or excitement on the rest of the team's faces there, but at least they got down, at least they got their finish and will get their points, and indeed have beaten Kazakhstan. So let's have a little look at what happened again. Danielle Scott had one of the better runs. Staudinger through the Kreisel, fairly low, of course, compared to what the men normally do, but that's because of the lower start height. But this was the biggest problem of all. Rosen clips in against the left-hand wall, that's what it was, and then got sent over to a corner you really shouldn't be up and on, and never quite recovered. Just entering corners far too late, and one of those ones you just want to ride off. You can see it in his face there already. He's had enough of this, and did well just to hang on. It's still pretty quick at 105 kilometers per hour. There isn't a lot of padding in those suits. Well, the Koreans have a good chance to beat the Brits now. Maybe not the Italians, that would be asking a little much, but they get kicked off with Eryong Song. She'll hand over to Nam Quy Lim, and then Park and Cho regular faces on the World Cup now, will finish off in the doubles. So a very solid doubles duo to finish off on anyway. Starting slower than the Italians, no surprise there. Vojta showed her worth in the individual race. So too much steering going on down a straight there by the Korean pilot. Dangerous stuff really, because you can end up going into a massive slide. You see the likes of the Germans where you almost don't see it. That's the point. It's so subtle, the steering. Down out of 14. That's pretty good stuff though. 107.4 kilometers per hour. You can't complain about that at all. Quicker than the Brits were doing at any point. And leg one actually pretty solid, you have to say, there by Sung of Korea. And grabbing his chance, it's Lim. Hit it hard out of the start house. Probably won't lose too much here in the early section to a manual rider. 2500s, 210s perhaps. Rider not exactly known for his starting prowess. Down into 13. Slick. Smooth. Exit of 14 is key, and that is good. Over 107 kilometers per hour. That's good too. And well, they might only be a second and a half down on the Italians. Maybe one and 3/4. If it goes to plan, yes. Okay, 1.8. Well, when you consider the Brits were 6 seconds down, the Kazakhs were 7.5 seconds down. It shows just how well the Koreans are sliding here as one of the small nations involved in Luge. 2.1 seconds is the difference. These two guys can slide. Jin Yong Park, the man piloting in front, keeping it cool. He may well start to let this fly, get his head back. 108.5, great speed by the doubles duo. Well, they might not lose anything to the Italians. Wouldn't that be something? 2.2 it was the last split. 2 seconds dead it is there. Great slide by Jim Yong Park and Yong Myung Cho. The Italians celebrate the fact that they're still in the lead, but well, when you look at the actual form, all of the Italian team were pushing for top 10, if not higher places in the individual races, while as the Koreans had one of their legs run by the doubles, made it into the actual World Cup race. The Brits, I'm afraid not, and likewise for the Kazakhs.
Very quickly, how was the trip?
Coming through 11-12. You know, these two might just do something a bit special in Korea. They know the track so well, and they're that bit closer to the rest of the world. I can see them going top 10 in their doubles race at the Olympics. Ukraine in the shape of Shkamova, Elena Shkamova. She will hand over to Andrei Manzi, and then Alexander Obolonchuk and Roman Zakharkiv will finish off the efforts for Ukraine. Well, the Ukraine team is one that is pretty experienced, it has to be said. The Ukrainians have been fielding top sliders for the last couple of decades in Luge. They've even taken medals in World Cups before, though none of those in this team, or in fact in this current generation, have done. Oh my goodness me, slamming up into the woodwork there, and they will not finish. Wow, that must have hurt. That was out of nowhere as well. Manzi doesn't know that his teammate has not finished, and as the pilot there, Shkamova, came through 14 up over the brow of the hill. There's a little negative G-pop, and something went terribly wrong. It just looked like she didn't steer when she went on to 15. Well, hopefully have another look at it in a second, but boy, was that a big hit. Probably have just winded her. Take a rest, Andre. Your work is done today, I'm afraid. Let's have a look again. Through 15, on to 16. Right, yes. So 15 came off late off of 15 and entered really late into 16. And rather than hitting a big steer early on, she allowed it just to come riding up the corner there. But the centrifugal force at that point is vicious. And it was a split second before she slammed off the woodwork. And yeah, well, there's not a lot of padding there. And there's perhaps a pair of long johns under a slightly thicker lycra type suit than you would wear in bobsleigh, but there's no Kevlar padding or anything to stop burns or to make things a little softer when you hit. The Italians enjoying their time in the limelight here, and it could last for a while. The Czechs to come, then the Poles. I don't really believe either of those two teams have the firepower to outdo the Italians, nor the Romanians or the Slovakians for that matter. So 4 more teams, I think, the Italians should really be beating. And with the times they've laid down, you would expect that. Perhaps just Nagler and Massier of the Italian duo at the end didn't quite live up to what they did in their individual race. Anyway, we're underway here with the Czech team, kicked off by Noskova. She'll hand over to Andrej Hyman, and then Obolongchuk and Zakirkiv, pretty experienced people, will be taking over. Or should I say the Broz brothers, actually. Sorry, change of lineup. And we are watching the Czech pilot coming round through corner 14, 106.3 kilometers per hour. Compared to the Italian time, which was run by Robacher, who was hitting 107.5 there. So it's going to be a time loss, which is fairly significant. 1.2 seconds outstarted, and the speed wasn't as good. It was always going to be a fair loss. Now the Czechs hand over to Andrej Hyman, who already you can see him grimacing there. Didn't exactly have a good 9 into 10. Exit of Kreisel. Well, that was solid. Sees him through a tricky part of the track right there. Correct take on point for 13 over the brow of the hill. Now this is where we had that big crash before. 15 into 16, spot on. Really quite low through the corner. And he'll hand over to the Broz brothers, assuming he hits the pad. He does. 1.9 seconds behind. The Czech team here, the Broz brothers, heads back, very experienced. They've made almost every World Cup for the last, goodness knows how many years, though. Never sit up inside the top 6, but they are solid journeymen who should not lose too much time to the Italians, if any. 2.2 seconds behind. That's where they're at. 109.5 kilometers per hour, though. Great speed. Over the line, and they slap the pad into 3rd position for the Czech team. So the Czech team, a wave to the crowd, 3rd place at the moment. So our next team out will be the Poles. we have a quick look here at how Noskova got on. Nothing wrong with that. Exit of 9 though, goodness. Big old slap off the left-hand wall. Did well to recover that, actually. That was nice. The release of the doubles duo, the Broz brothers. Always a safe pair of hands. And with brotherly ESP, they load onto the sled. Not exactly a typical doubles duo where you have one massive guy in front and a small fella underneath who gets enveloped and creates great aerodynamics, but somehow similar sized brothers can make up for that lack of aerodynamics purely by working so well together. Second guessing each other, I guess, as Natalia Vojta, followed by Sokovic of Poland, and then Chmielewski and Kowalewski. And they will finish off this Polish team's attempt. A lot of pressure here on Vojta. Vojta didn't do the women's race, didn't make it through the Nations Cup. So of all of the legs, the only leg not to have run in the World Cup. So perhaps you could suggest this is the weakest leg of the three, just purely because of that fact. Rounding through 14. If it's the weakest, the Poles are on for a good slide here. This is very good stuff from Vojta, who's sliding, punching way above her normal weight. Only 0.48 off of Robacher there, and absolutely spanking it off the hill is Mateusz Sokovic, who has come to the fore in the last couple of races. Suddenly it's not just Maciej Kurowski. He's being outdone by this youngster, and 0.7 is the difference from Poland to Italy. It's amazing how just a couple of new, young, talented sliders can suddenly really breathe life into a whole country's program. And that's exactly what this young man's done. 109.6 kilometers per hour. I haven't written it down, but I think that's the fastest so far. So well done. And he'll hand over to Chmielewski and Kowalewski, who are power starters. 0.829 behind. Gosh, could they pull off a miracle here and beat the Italians? It's a huge margin to try and pull back in, but the Italian duo just weren't that good. Making mistakes like that isn't possible. In fact, they go behind, 0.9 behind. Well, if it was Eggert and Benneken coming down for the Germans, 0.8 behind the Italians, I'd probably fancy them to do it, you know. The Italian duo just weren't that quick at all. But Chmielewski and Kowalewski have had a fair few errors so far. And they will slap the pad behind the Italians, but ahead of everybody else. So well done, Poland. And the Italians acting like it's a surprise that they're still in the lead after 7 nations have come down. To be fair, the Italians can take medals in the team relay event easily. They are that good, and the smaller nations of losing very much coming down first. And the only reason the Italians actually were first off the hill is because they had a DQ. It did not finish, actually, a DNF in the first race in Innsbruck. So if my prediction's right, they'll probably still be on top after the Romanians and the Slovakians, and then Team Austria looks pretty mean. I imagine the Austrians will eclipse them. Ralika Stramatoraru, Andrei will be doing the second leg, and then the doubles duo of Atto Desarai and Musai to finish off perhaps Most likely to do the best leg here is Stramatoraru, who was particularly good this morning in the women's individual race. The one thing the Romanians do have on their side is they know this track very, very well. More often than not, they would come here or Winterberg to do their training, and that's a wee bit disappointing from Stramatoraru. She had pretty much no option there. Starting to go into a slide, just stabilized herself through 11.12. Up and on to 13. She was 0.13 behind. She's 0.31 behind, though. The speed, she's managed to get that right back up again. So that one error has cost her a lot of time. Can she clock some back before she hits the pad? That's the question. Yes, she does. That immense top-end speed she managed to build up there. Pulled back. Hands down is what the Romanian man took over in the men's leg, the second leg. And that is Tures, is his name. Theodore Tures, and he comes through Kreisel down into 11.12. She looks not too bad at all at the moment, standing up to the pressure nicely, and 107.2 is good speed, very good speed. Not exactly a name you know in losing, but he's put in a big performance, bigger than his reputation, so well done to him as he hands over to his doubles duo of Atto Desarai and Moussaie, who indeed do have names you know from the World Cup, if you've ever enjoyed the doubles luge. But in truth, they tend to be down the bottom end of the 24. And they have experience. Through 13. The Italians weren't brilliant in their doubles section, but still far better than the Romanians are now. Only 104 kilometers per hour. They're just going to keep losing time here, I'm afraid. And slot into 5th position, ahead of Great Britain, behind the Czech Republic. So the order currently: Italy, yes, you guys are in the lead. Poland 2nd, Korea 3rd, the Czechs are 4th, Romania 5th, Great Britain in 6th, the Kazakhs down in 7th. And the Ukrainian team, DNF, did not finish. Well, it could have been just a beautiful slide from Stramatoraru. If she hadn't made that mistake, she wouldn't have lost anywhere near as much time, because her top-end speed was one of the finest we've seen. She may well have clawed back and finished almost even with the Italian Robacha if she hadn't made that mistake. So Italy are still 9/10 ahead of the rest of the world, 9/10 of a second, as our next team prepares. Slovakia. Now, maybe they could do something here. Simonakova is a key part, being undoubtedly the least experienced of the sliders here. So if she can get her run out the way without giving up more than, let's say, 4 or 5 tenths. Running the men's leg actually is Joseph Ninnis, who is okay most of the time on the World Cup, but he was very good here yesterday. Oh, I think it was going to be more than 4 or 5 tenths, though. And this is the problem with the team relay. You need strength and depth across all of the disciplines. You really can't be too hard on this young Slovakian, as she's stepping up and giving it a go on one of the most fierce tracks in the world, a track that took down 3 great pilots this morning in the women's race. Big crashes. Oh my goodness. Oh, pinballing away up the final straight. That's probably lost another half a second in that alone. When you're going uphill and you take a hit, it's compounded badly. Well, Joseph Ninnis, he's not a miracle worker. He was good this morning, or yesterday morning, but he's not that good, I'm afraid. 1.7 seconds is how far he's down. 1.8 seconds, so he's lost little to Emmanuel Ryder. Through the 11.12. He really does know this track well. His head's right back. Looks so comfortable. 108.6 kilometers per hour. And the ace in the pack for Slovakia just stops the rot, I'm afraid. Handed such a massive deficit when he took over. Well, even he loses 2 or 3 tenths in his leg as well to Emmanuel Ryder. So the Slovakian duo of Solkanski and Stuszlak, Olympians, but not world beaters. Through the Kreisel, very flat, which is good. Flat is good on 3 pressure corners. Exit of 12. They ride it very well, sets themselves up nicely for 13, 14. Spot the exit well there too. Want to be on the right as you enter 15. Speed is pretty good, so they're not going to lose too much more time. 2 or 3 seconds difference. 2.5 it is. Split the difference. And they go into 5th position, just behind the Czechs. Well, pressure's off for these guys. And they've done their individual event, or their doubles event as it is. And they know there isn't a great amount of expectation on them succeeding. But good experience for this young lady who is just learning the ropes on the World Cup level. And when you're not sliding in the individual race, to suddenly be thrust into the limelight on Team Relay Day, it can be pretty nervy. So Semenakova handed over to Ninnis. And then Solkanski and Stuszlak fairly calmly took it down the hill. But they are still in 5th position. Romania just behind them, and again behind Romania is Great Britain and then Kazakhstan. Now then, here is a team of heavyweights. But even Kaslunger, Youth Olympic Games champion, she will hand over to Wolfgang Kindl, the world champion. And finishing them off will be a pair of sliders who are world class on their day, Pence and Fischler. Men who've taken gold medals in several World Cups now. Nearly took a medal at the last Olympics before they crashed. That's that is the one problem. They are a little erratic. Kaslunger not at all erratic though. Not the greatest starter. That's why the difference between her and Robacher stands at the moment. But that will come back if things work as normal. 0.246, not yet. 108.4 kilometers per hour though. Great top end speed, and she's got a little bit more of the track to pull it back in with. She cannot take a tap before the pad dives for it. And she did indeed pull back a couple of tenths. So well done there. Holding her form at the end, Kaslunger. Now this really does suit Wolfie Kindl. Longer track, more time to work his silky skills, and he's up against Emmanuel Ryder. He has not started well at all though. He was slow in the draw at the start, pulling himself off the hill. So it's almost 4 tenths he's given up. Or he personally has given up 2 of those tenths. But Kindl, what's the speed? 110 maybe? 110.5. Wow. He could pull 2 tenths of that back. It's possible. He's that good. His speed is that brilliant. Slams it. Well, it was down to 1/3 of a second. He finished it off 1/4 of a second down. What can the Austrians do with their doubles duo? Peter Pence, Georg Fischler, power starters. I imagine they'll be reeling in a lot of that quarter of a second. No, they don't. Oh, goodness. The old man was slow out of the start house. Exit of Kreisel was excellent, though. Head right back. Peter Pence doesn't mess around. He'll gamble. No doubt it's a calculated gamble in his head. And look at the speed, 109.7 kilometers per hour. There's 0.18 of a second to make up, less than 2/10. They've already made up a quarter of a second. There's still another 100 meters of ice for them to work their magic. And yes, a track record. Austria have done it with Peter Pence and Georg Fischler. The wild boys of doubles losing. Wild as in, who knows how they're going to finish. It could be magnificent. It could be on their heads. And that was a healthy dose of magnificence from Peter Pence and Georg Fischler, despite being slow out of the starts. I'll have to address that for next time. They're not going to win overall medals if they're that slow in the getaway. Both the doubles duo and Wolfie Kindle. Look at that, the gates were opened. Wake up, Wolfie. You've got to hit that a bit earlier. Reaction time needs worked on. And it was Peter Pence and Georg Fischler. I think they were really at full stretch there, ready to pull off the hill when that gate opened. There is no coach up there either, coaching them into when they should start. It's purely reactionary. Team Latvia, Eliza Kauser, Christos Apiyods, and then Gudrumovics and Kalnins will finish it off, rather than the six brothers. Interesting choice. Well, Eliza Kauser on her day can produce some pretty spectacular results. Last year finished 12th in the overall World Cup rankings. Most impressively, though, she managed a 4th place in Altenberg last season. So she loves the track. And she's in the lead. There we go. Behind again, though, compared to Zandra. Not Zandra Robacher anymore, not at all. What am I talking about? It's not the Italians in the lead at all. It's the Austrians. So being compared to Mariam Kastlunger's time. Kastlunger's always a slow starter, great at the bottom, and well, oh! Did she touch that? If it was, it's a pretty sensitive pad. They are very lucky, the Latvians, very lucky. It was more of a waft than it was a whack. And I've seen heavier hits not actually register. So luck is on the Latvian side. As Kirsters Apiyods comes winging it down the hill, good at getting top end speed, and he delivers 109.9. He will be reeling in Team Austria. Well, maybe not too much, actually, because it was Wolfie Kindle who also had great top-end speed, in fact, even faster. He was the only man faster than Apiyods. So, indeed, he doesn't pull anything back in. A little heavy on the Kufin there. The main doubles pilot, Gudrumovics, hauling it round the corner. Four tenths. The difference at the moment now. Let's say they don't beat Austria to go in ahead of Italy. Italy are 0.15, 1600s, let's call it, behind the Austrians. Well, then very unlikely to put in 4 tenths at the moment. In fact, impossible at that speed. So they've really just got to hold off the Poles, who were 1.09 seconds behind. They've just done that. Wow, just as maybe a bit harsh. It's just over 2 tenths advantage in the end over the Poles, who get bumped to 4th. The Italians are in 2nd, Latvia in 3rd. It's the Austrians who lead the way at the moment. USA, then the Russians, Canada, and then finally Germany to go in this team relay event. Now, how much of a touch was this? Yeah, not a lot, but she did touch it. So the system works and is fair, and you don't have to hit it with a certain punch power. You do just have to hit it to set it off. But we have seen pilots just doing a similar kind of waft of the bottom of the pad and it not going off. So you do wonder just how consistent it is. Probably very consistent on the same pad, perhaps different on different systems at different tracks. So no doubt the same for all, and that's key. So USA, Summer Britcher gets the nod to do the women's leg. Taylor Morris will do the men's. And then Hearns and Espinosa finish off. Well, you would say at most tracks the American team has a very good chance of actually pushing the Germans. Maybe not so here in Altenberg, not after the success we've seen the Germans gain in their individual events. It's hard to imagine the USA could pull out anything that would match that, but they're definitely in the running for a team that could finish 2nd, I'd say that. And Summer Britcher is a perfect lead leg. Oh, a little rub there through 15. We have seen quicker speeds, but she's going to take the lead for the USA, I believe. Her speed was just about good enough to hang on. And hang on indeed she does, extending it actually a 1/4 of a second now. The advantage for USA's Taylor Morris to take over with. An annoying rub down the wall there for Taylor Morris. That'll be frustrating for him. Mustn't let that get to his head now. Almost a rub coming into 11, but I don't think he did take a hit. 14. Oh, big old bump there. Heels into the ice. And at a point you really don't want to take a hit. Coming up the hill almost. So, USA are in the lead. I imagine they'll go behind. They do by 0.16. So everything now is down to this American duo of Jake Hearns and Anthony Espinosa. Some heavy steering at the start. Feet down on the ice at the end. Wrong angle into Kreisel. This is no world-beating run here. Again, a little tap before that negative G spot from 14 to 15. The question is, will they get anywhere near the Italians? Will they be ahead of the Latvians? Will they even be behind the Poles? My goodness, they've slipped behind the Poles 1.4 seconds. They're into 5th. Well, Summer, you did a good job, that's for sure. All still to squeeze in before Christmas. Now we're staring at the exit of corner 9 there, but I think the slow-mo was queued up slightly wrong, but here is 11.12. No real mistakes there. Yes, that's perfect. Corner 9, you see steering on a straight, big mistake. Olympic champion sits next to Olympic champion. Boy, is the German team fierce. There's no other way to say it. Every single section of their team is better than anyone else's. As a unit, terrifying to take on. Now, the Russians. Tatiana Ivanova, great starter, and goes well out in the lead ahead of Mariam Kaslunger, who did the Austrian first leg. Quarter of a second. Goodness, Ivanova's fast to the starts. She looked very good in the second run of the women's individual race, that has to be said. 109.7 kilometers per hour. She's looking very good here in the team relay event. Nearly 110 kilometers per hour. When she's the body weight she is brilliant. Good old hit of the pad. 2/3 of a second up is where our next pilot finds himself, and that's Roman Repelov, the World Cup champion from last year. Now that is good, solid, subtle steering. He hadn't found his touch in the first couple of weekends, but this weekend gone, he started to look a little bit more like the man we knew last season, who was just fierce at every track he went to. Looking pretty smooth through the bottom, back up the hill. Lunge for the pad, and he has only improved the Russian time gap to the rest of the world, to Austria first and foremost. The doubles duo, Bogdanov and Medvedev. Well, a silver medal this week for Roman Repelov. Oh my goodness me. It's like a fairground ride, this. Where's the steering, fellas? Oh, goodness. Nearly a crash there. And they seem to have completely lost their cool. The man behind, no doubt, shouting to Bogdanov in front, who it looks like he's never driven this track before. What is going on? The speed is pretty pedestrian. I think that punch on the pad said it all. If you're going to rip the whole thing down with that hit, that would have been what he would have wanted to have done. Just in ahead of the Brits, though. That would have been a nice scalp for the Brits to take if they'd have gone a bit slower. Well, Repelov pretends a few tears, but he's all cool. Both he and Ivanova are in the running for a podium place at the Olympics. You can see that for sure. They both have the ability, but team relay medals count just as much. And the Russians, they're going to have to address which of these, which of them more hits than Elvis there. Goodness, what was this? Just didn't take a steer when the pressures came on. I don't know what he was thinking. Well, maybe you don't think very much on the first slap. Sort of reminds me of what I believe Mike Tyson once said, that everyone's got a plan going into a boxing match until they get punched in the nose. And I guess everyone's got a plan in luge as well until they get slammed off a wall, and, well, plans can kind of go out the window. Canada kick off with Alex Goff, who was outstanding in the individual race, really pushing the three German women as close as she could for the medals. Didn't get one, but put in a couple of very commanding runs. Through 13, well up on Miriam Kastlunger's time. The Austrian still leading, 109 kilometers per hour. Great top end speed as well. She could be as much as 3/10 up here to hand over to Mitchell Malik. Well, quarter of a second. You wouldn't sneer at it anyway. That is a big, big margin to have. Now Malik must keep his cool here and try and work on that advantage. Very quick out of the start house. Very quick. It's a little sloppy, but so quick he's still got, or still has made, about 800s on the Austrians himself. Into 14. Exit is arrows straight. Runners are pointing forward. 108.8. He may well lose a little bit more time to Wolfie Kindle, who's hitting 110.5 there, but he probably won't lose all the time. At least that's what you'd hope, and he does. He loses all of it and more. 300ths of a second is the difference. So it comes down to Tristan Walker and Justin Smith, who I bet wish they were on their Vancouver or Calgary ice. And the Austrian duo was Peter Pence and Georg Fischler. And that's a mean duo to have to beat on German ice. The Austrians went wild. They were poor in the starts, but they just clawed back time all the way down. And the very fact that these two have gone down now does not bode well for their chances of taking the lead. 1500s behind with the Italians. Will they take second? No, they won't. That slides cost them at least that. And Walker will be furious with himself. The Latvians are bumped off the podium. And we cut away just in time to avoid any heavy cursing from Alex Goff there. So I'm afraid Walker and Smith just not quite where they were a season or two ago. You would have thought they would have matured into a team or a duo that may well be matching the Germans by now, but if anything, they've gone backwards a little bit. Or is that a little bit harsh, perhaps? It is, after all, Altenberg, and even the greats can get this wrong. And Walker and Smith are currently in 12th position overall in the World Cup. Best finish a 6th place, but they've been outside the top 15 as well, and that was one of their worst performances we've seen. Felix Lok looks like he almost can't be bothered. It's just so easy, surely. Olympic champ hands to Olympic champ, who then hands on through to the overall World Cup champions and the world beaters right now in Eggert and Beneken. So Geisenberger to do the first leg for Germany. Goes into the lead straight away ahead of Miriam Kastlinger of Austria, 0.14. Round through the tricky little labyrinth, 11-12. Geisenberger was so cool, calm and collected in the individual race, breaking the downtime record. Even 80% of Geisenberger turning up should take the lead here by some margin. How big is it? Quarter of a second, and Felix Lok, he was super schnell out of the start there. Couldn't have been much quicker. In fact, he was quicker and more aggressive there than he was in his own individual race, which, of course, he won. As did Geisenberger, though a little tap, and now he relaxes. Through the Kreisel. Flat as flat can be as he went through the pressures there. On to 13. That massive bulk of his will kick in some great top-end speed, I'm sure. 109.5. He's a third of a second up. Of course, remember, Wolfie Kindle did Austria's second leg, and he was hitting 110 kilometers there, the world champion. Oh, Felix pulls his hand out a little early and actually doesn't get any more time terms of advantage than he was given. So pretty much did exactly the same split as Wolfgang Kindl, but that again is really no surprise. Kindl, if he could, would have tracks double the length because he's such a great pilot and not such a great starter. So Eggert and Benneken, world champions. European champions, World Cup champions. Look at the speed, 112.2 kilometers per hour. Goodness me, I'm surprised there isn't flames coming out the back here. These guys are absolutely tearing it up. Track record to boot for the German team. And that was maybe performance of the day right there by Eggert and Benneken. Wow. Well, the one thing missing from the success that Eggert and Benneken have had, and they have had a lot of success. They are undoubtedly, in terms of being in their category, they are way out ahead of the rest of the world. Yes, Felix Loch and Geisenberger are also out in front of their respective disciplines in the men's and the women's, but nowhere near as much as Eggert and Benneken. They are just clicking perfectly. If they can keep that going to the Olympics, they are almost a dead cert. They are so good right now. And of course, the Olympic medal is what has been eluding them. That's all they need to relax and say they've done it all. Felix Loch, well, compared to Wolfgang Kindl, didn't look so impressive, but Wolfgang Kindl is exceptionally impressive himself, so a little bit deceptive that Felix Loch didn't gain any time. He did well actually not to lose any time against the likes of Wolfgang Kindl over a longer track. In truth.
Stand by for XQ and commercial break after the rain.
So Germany, there's confirmation, takes the victory. Austria second, Italy third. They kicked it off at the start. They're still there in the end. Canada, Latvia, Poland, some disappointing performances within the teams there. Great Britain could have no doubt done better, but 13th, not so bad. Down the bottom, it's the Kazakhs and the Ukrainians. Well, for the last time this weekend, we come back to Altenberg to see the sun shining. And it shines on a German team that look really tremendous. It's quite funny, really, that perhaps one of the slowest corners and exits on the track, corner 9, was the one that troubled the great Geisenberger and indeed Felix Loch. Everybody finds that one tricky. There's Loch down through 11-12. And of course, Eggert and Benneken, my goodness, were they brilliant in the end. Perhaps this is their year to go on to Pyeongchang and with such firepower take the gold medal that they very much deserve. Well, there we go. The Germans take first, they take gold again, back-to-back golds in the team relay. The Austrian team, silver, and the Italians, bronze.
And final clip in 10.
That certainly makes up for the Italians crashing out in the first team relay in Innsbruck. Young team as well, but the Germans, my goodness, a third of a second, they're on top. Well, when we return, we will be in Calgary, then Lake Placid, so Canada and then the USA before Christmas. So still plenty more sliding and a lot more sliding before we get to Pyeongchang in February. Well, that's it from me, Colin Bryce. Till next weekend, a very goodbye.